Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's rescheduled webinar from last week. Before we begin, I do want to extend my apologies for the abrupt canceling of last week's webinar. I don't know how many of you guys actually follow our website. However, my mother actually passed away on last Thursday, July 3rd. And I think, as all of us would probably agree, I really wasn't in the right condition to do a presentation at that time. So I thank you guys for your willingness to have this rescheduled today. And I'm looking forward to helping you guys out on this very important topic of aging in place. Now, this presentation today, or this webinar, is being presented by the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm. I will be your presenter today. My name is Shannon Pawley. Now, as always, if you talk to an attorney, they're usually always going to give you a disclosure. I want to emphasize to you is everything I'm talking about today is being presented for educational purposes only. Nothing should be construed as legal advice I'm giving today. The reason why is with any area of law, but definitely estate planning and long-term care planning, these are very individualized and fact-specific to the person. Further, public policy and law, these are areas of frequent change. So if there's anything I talk about today that catches your attention, you'd like to learn more about, make sure you reach out to an experienced elder law attorney regarding your particular circumstances. As a matter of fact, for attending today's webinar, I will be extending to you an opportunity to have a complimentary 15-minute strategy session with one of my non-attorney team members. Now, as stated, my name is Shannon Pawley. I'm the CEO and owner of the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm. So a little bit about myself. I am a licensed attorney. I'm licensed both the states of Michigan as well as Georgia. And in addition to having a Juris Doctorate, I also have a Master's of Law in Tax. Now, I have over 26 years of experience in estate planning, elder law, tax planning, probate, and creditor rights. Now, this whole passion in this area of law definitely was founded in high school and college, where I was a nursing home volunteer, where I saw the difference between the haves and the have-nots, and those that were trying to get back to their home to age in place, and those that unfortunately weren't able to age in place and had to transition into that skilled nursing environment. Definitely had a lasting handprint on my heart. Further, as I was stating, I am the daughter of a mother who had vascular dementia. And in that aspect, as a family caregiver, we were trying to keep my mother at home as long as possible until, unfortunately, her health concerns and the state of her dementia had it to where she needed the 24/7 care that we could not provide the home. And she herself, unfortunately, had to transition from aging in place into a skilled nursing facility. Lastly, it's always an honor to work with our veterans. I am a VA accredited attorney that help out veterans with trying to get some assistance with some long-term care opportunities for them and their surviving spouses for our wartime vets. And I am the proud dog mom of 2 adorable Welsh Terriers, my friends. Now, here at the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm, our firm's vision is that we're creating a world where persons, they don't lose everything. Their assets, their independence, their dignity, their grace, when their mind or body betrays them. That's why it is our firm's mission to ensure that people live and die with the highest quality of life possible. Because we are dedicated to ensuring that your voice, your independent thoughts, your intentions, your instructions, your self-declared legacy is preserved through your estate planning documents and strategy, even if your mind or body silences you later in life. Now, there can be a multitude of reasons why you're here today. Perhaps you're one of the persons where it's your goal to age in home until you pass. Well, if that's your goal, let's talk about some of the pitfalls to avoid and some of the strategies to focus on. Perhaps you want to create a plan today to avoid having to go into a nursing home tomorrow. Trust me, nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, yay, it's my day, I'm going into a nursing home. But unfortunately, either due to necessity, need, or only option, people do unfortunately go into that nursing home, and you might want to try to start that plan today to avoid that as best as you can. Perhaps you're actually unsure of what you need to do today to support these goals of aging in place. Or you want to confirm that you and your home are ready to age in place. Now, there could be a multitude of reasons why you're here today, my friends. Whatever that foundational question urge that led you to meet with me today, welcome. Let's talk about what we're going to learn about in today's webinar. So the first thing we're going to learn about is exactly what is aging in place. It's a term that's becoming to have a lot of popularity, especially as we're having our aging baby boomers. They've always been a very independent generation. And now they're to the point that they are transitioning into older age and want to try to stay at that home as long as possible. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that whole aging in place focus you may be hearing in the news to understand more what that's meant for. And then we're going to talk about why you would want to age in place. Then we're going to talk about a few statistics about persons when aging in place. And then we're going to cap everything off with the top 7 most common pitfalls when trying to age in place. So, my friends, without further ado, let's start with that first question or focus of study. And that is, what exactly is aging in place? So aging in place focuses on allowing older adults to continue living in their own homes and communities safely, independently, and comfortably as they grow older. Realizes this concept emphasizes the importance of enabling seniors to maintain their lifestyle while adapting their living environment to meet their evolving needs. The goal of aging in place is to empower those individuals to live with independence, dignity, and a high quality of life, all while staying in the familiar comfort of their own home for as long as possible. Now, aging in place gives an individual the freedom to maintain control over their surroundings, to preserve their daily routines they cherish, and to avoid the emotional and physical challenges of leaving the space they know and love. It's about living fully on terms of their own with confidence that they will continue to thrive in the place that feels most like home. So as you see here, when it comes to aging in place, the focus is to empower those persons that wish to age in place. And how do you empower them? You empower them by making sure that their environment that they are in and the support system they have while living in place or at the home is going to not only maintain their current needs, but also their ever-evolving needs. So why would you want to age in place? Well, number one, like what we talked about, there's a certain comfort of being in your familiar environments because home is where the heart is, as they say. And those familiar surroundings, they do offer a lot of emotional security. In addition, residential long-term care, it's expensive. I've often talked about, especially when I'm talking about Medicaid, for example, that skilled nursing in Metro Atlanta, it can range from $5,000 to $16,000 a month. That is an astronomical amount to be paying out that will deplete the average middle-class American's nest egg in less than 3 to 5 years. So by aging in place, people often view that as a much more cost-effective option because, like it states here, it's often more affordable than assisted living or nursing homes. Now, another reason you might want to age in place is to maintain that independence. Because here's the thing, just because mom and dad have gotten older, just because mom and dad might have a little bit more difficulty getting out and about and they're maybe a little bit slower, that doesn't mean that they don't have a right to maintain their independence and their focus and their wants to be able to be pursued. Because older people want to maintain control over their daily living lives. And this is what aging in place is going to allow them. That's part of that empowerment I was talking about. So what are a few statistics concerning aging in place? Well, according to the AARP 2021 Home and Community Preferences Survey, 77% of adults aged 50 and older expressed a preference to remain in their home as they age. Let's see how similar that is here in this group that we have today. Who here in this group hopes to do all that you can and be able to age in place, stay in your home or in your community as you're aging? And if this is for you, type yes in chat. Because I know myself, even though I understand this industry and I understand all of the positives that can happen in residential skilled nursing living or facility assistance, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what I want when I age. I myself, I want to age in place personally, just like, as I see here, Deborah, Mary Beth, Mary, Richard, David, Floyd. And I'm sure this list is going to keep getting longer and longer and longer, my friends. So just by our own grouping here, I think we will surpass that 2021 Home and Community Preferences Survey. I can almost guarantee you that we probably have 100% in this room, or pretty darn close, that want to remain in their homes as they age. Now, this trend has been steadily increasing over the past 2 decades. As a result, the number of older adults residing in nursing homes, it actually has decreased, while the number of living in traditional housing has risen. Now, when I first started out doing elder law tax planning, I had never really heard of a personal care home because they weren't that prominent at that time. This is kind of like, I'll call it almost like the happy medium at times between aging in place and having to go into a facility for 24/7 care. And what these homes, what they do, it's usually a home in a standard community. It looks like a standard home. And usually these personal care homes, they have maybe anywhere between, 2 to 8 beds very often. And persons, they live in there, and there's usually a nurse or a care provider that's there 24/7, so that they still have the familiarity of more of like a home environment than institutionalized. And this is why when we start talking about aging in place, sometimes this aging in place, we're talking about first preference in your home, second preference is in your community quite often. Then third or last resort is having to go into a facility. Miss Pat or Mr. Pat, I'll just call you Pat. Congratulations, 87, and you're doing it well. You keep that up, my friend. Who knows? You might be able to add some more stuff to this presentation today that we're talking about. Now, realize that reflecting this shift, one of the big things you need to realize if you want to age in place is that it very often requires home modifications. Because as you see here, 76% of remodeling professionals report a significant uptick to requests for home modifications designed to support aging in place over the 5 years prior to this. Because realize, just because it was a great home to raise a family in, that doesn't mean that 3-level home is the best place to reside in while you are trying to age in place, where the main floor has the living room and the kitchen. The top floor has the bedrooms and the basement has the laundry. While that worked great for raising a family, that may not be the best thing, having to go through 3 different floors, for example, to try to age in place. That's kind of where these remodeling professionals step in. Now, what are some of the top reasons that people prefer to age in place? So 83% of individuals feel safer in their home than other options. There is a certain security in the familiar environment of your home. You know what the home sounds like. You know who the neighbors are. You've got friends and family that look out for you. I can completely understand about feeling safer in your home than a new environment. 56% express that their home holds sentimental value, reminding them of their family, especially when we're dealing with persons, for example, that are starting to show cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's. There's a significant value of being in a familiar environment, because with each environmental change, their cognition will plummet. So there is a significant value, I'm going to say a medical value, even in seeing a familiar environment, as seen with cognitive decline. But also there's just something wonderful about walking past that wall in the kitchen where you see all the little marks where you said how tall your children were at different ages as they were growing, for example. Or that garden you have in the back that still has a tree that you took off of grandmother's tree at her place that you transplanted into yours, for example. Definitely sentimental values are a significant reason people want to age in place. We have 62% that report that they have an emotional attachment to their home. So it's not only sentimental, there's an emotional attachment. Perhaps that home was built by your husband and your husband's now passed. So in that home, as that home envelops over you as you are in its structure, it's as though your husband's hugging you. You don't want to leave that. 43% are uncertain whether they could afford the cost associated with assisted living. I'll be honest with you. This is an older survey. I can guarantee that's much higher now. And then 40% say the desire for independence is the driving factor for living independently, with happiness ranking as the second most prevalent response. So there's a significant psychological benefit of staying in your home, as you see with most of these preferences are psychological or emotional to the person. And my comment is this: I believe that the mind can heal or slow down certain ailments in the body. And there's a significant benefit of being able to age in place along with all of those memories, all those emotions, all those sentimental value assets within the home. Now, the prevalence of chronic health conditions as we age. Realize if we're going to be aging in place, you got to realize that chronic health conditions, they're pretty darn prevalent as we're aging. 94.9% of persons age 60 plus have at least one chronic condition. 78.7% of persons 60 plus have two or more chronic conditions that they are receiving medical supervision for. And when we start talking about chronic conditions, because some people may not know exactly what I'm referring to, I have here listed the top 10 chronic health conditions for persons age 65 or over. You see the number one right there, high blood pressure, followed by high cholesterol, arthritis, heart disease, diabetes, chronic kidney failure, heart failure, depression, Alzheimer's and dementia, or COPD. Now, we don't have to ask this question to the group here because I don't want y'all guys sharing your personal information, but I know myself that I'm in my 50s, but even as I look at the chronic health conditions, I'm falling under at least high cholesterol right now for myself. And so even before I'm hitting that 60 plus, I'm already part of that 94.9 there. So as you can see, you understand now what age in place is. You understand why people want to age in place. You understand the benefits that can happen from people aging in place. Let's now start talking about some of the pitfalls that people experience as they try to age in place. Now, this is a really, really big one, my friends. And so pitfall number one is people are overlooking the need for home modifications. Their home could have a lot of fall risks, such as stairs, perhaps slippery floors. Perhaps they're a hoarder and now we have unclear pathways, unstable furniture, poor lighting. So there could be a lot of fall risk, both by structure or by lifestyle choice that could be happening in the home. In addition, there could be a lot of fire risks. Realize if you are trying to stay at home and age in place, you've got to be observant of the fire risks that could happen. For example, forgetting to turn off appliances, neglecting your heating source. I remember my husband's grandmother, while trying to age in place, had forgotten to take the dryer lint out of the dryer. And you want to talk something that's really flammable. Well, apparently that's extremely flammable because she ended up having a fire that went into her walls that had to, be addressed by the fire department. She never really thought about that, but she had just neglected about pulling out the dryer lint, for example. Also, that failure to maintain smoke detectors. We don't have to raise our hands with hand of shame here, but I'll raise my hand stating that There's been a couple of times that I get tired of hearing the beeping of the fire smoke detector, and I've unplugged it before. And sometimes I forget to plug it back in for a term of days or weeks. Or it beeps saying low battery, and I don't promptly go change it. And let's not forget wiring, especially as we're coming to much more electronic focused community. We got to make sure that the wiring in the home with all of the added electronics and with just the age of the wiring doesn't become a fire risk. And also remember, as we age, a lot of times we need some assistance with mobility. And if we have that limited mobility, either today or we're prepared to age in place to address it for the future, got to make sure that you don't have an inaccessible bathroom, or you have furniture that's difficult to get into or out of, narrow hallways, those multi-level homes. If you have mobility issues, even if it's just a split level going down 3 or 4 stairs, that's going to directly and negatively affect quality of life as you're trying to age in place. So if these are all the risks that I'm talking about with this first pitfall of overlooking the need for home modification, then what's the resolution? And so the resolution is making sure that you're doing safety and accessibility modifications. So for example, for the purposes of home modifications, you might need to widen the doorway. What if you are in a wheelchair? We got to make sure it can go in and out. You want to make sure that you're installing grab bars, especially in the bathroom, so you can get in and out of the bathtub easier. Perhaps we need ramps or stair lifts or elevators. I'm starting to see more elevators in homes nowadays, even in new construction. In Florida, for example, I went to 3 open houses with a girlfriend last time I was in Florida. All 3 of the new construction houses that were multi-level, they were 3 to 4 level houses. They all had personal elevators, which I thought was kind of interesting. Now, also, you want to make sure that you have proper lighting throughout the house. And so perhaps you only have table lamps. Well, maybe we want to get some of the can lamps up in the ceiling, so we make sure you have good lighting. And let's remember, eliminate those tripping hazards, those area rugs, like you put in front of your sink or in front of your toilet in the bathroom. Get rid of them. Those are a significant tripping hazard. Same thing where you have like the little runners in the hallway. Get rid of those. Those are a tripping hazard. So as you see, these home modifications I'm talking about, they could be as simple as getting rid of an area rug, or let's actually wrap up those loose cords. Or it could be something far more expensive, such as widening doorways or installing stair lifts, an elevator, etc. But once again, these home modifications are to make living in the home easier as you're aging in place. Also remember that if you're trying to age in place, you really want to make sure that you have first floor living. What do I mean by that? We don't want you to have to go up and down stairs or multi-level living. You want everything on the same floor. So if your bathroom is not on the first floor, you need to talk about a home modification to put a bathroom on the first floor. Or if the laundry is downstairs, you've got to sit down and work with someone to bring your laundry washer and dryer upstairs, perhaps in a pantry closet, for example. And then lastly, when we're talking about the safety and the accessibility modifications in the home, don't forget the joy of technology that we have right now, ranging from emergency response systems. So for example, about 2 years ago, when my mom and dad were trying to allow her to age in place. And unfortunately, she ended up having an incident that she fell, and she was wearing one of those necklaces that knew that by the quick fall, it immediately called the emergency response, and they were out there quickly. I was very impressed, but also realized it's not just the I've fallen and I can't get up commercial that I'm talking about with technology solutions. Realize automated medication dispensers We want to make sure that your medication management is being properly managed and maintained. And we want to make sure that you don't forget to take your medication, or God forbid, overtake medication because you forgot that you'd already taken it. So there's a benefit with these automatic medication dispensers. And don't forget the joy of those smart home devices, my friends. One of the coolest things that my husband ever did for me was to install Alexa throughout my house. So that when I walk in, I just say, Alexa, turn on the basement lights. And boom, guess what? I have that lighting in the basement as I'm walking in from the garage to be safe as I move forward towards my ultimate destination of usually my bedroom. So as you see, this is a big one, but this is one that the cures can range from a very nominal value up to something more of an investment. But realize, even if you're having to do one of the higher cost investments, it's an investment so you can age in place. What a wonderful investment that you're investing for your own independent security, sanctity, and emotional security. So let's talk about pitfall number 2 that happens quite often when people are trying to age in place. And that is the lack of a family or caregiver support system. Now, very often we have the limited family support scenario. This is where a person's family, they don't live close by. They actually live pretty far away. And while they may come in on weekends, they can't give that consistent help to meet the care needs that you may have on a regular basis. So you could have certain care needs go unmet because you unfortunately have that limited family support just due to proximity and distance from where you're trying to age in place at. Now, the other extreme of this one is when you actually do have someone close by, but unfortunately you start to over-rely on that one or a couple of family caregivers. Because you can't expect a family member to manage all of your care indefinitely. That's completely unrealistic. And realize one of the most difficult burdens of love that a person can ever give to another is that of being a caregiver. And caregiving, it can lead to some pretty significant burnout. During COVID, I saw this quite a bit. What was very interesting to me about COVID when it comes to the over-reliance on family caregivers is that very often from the time that COVID started to the point that it ended, I started seeing clients again. My personal clients, they were actually looking pretty good. They looked like they had, progressed standardly on whatever their health ailment projectile was. But the caregivers, they look like they had aged 10 years in one. And it's simply because of that burnout that they had, because they were the only caregiver that was able to provide the care to the loved one during that time. So when we're talking about the support system, make sure you have a support system, but don't unrealistically over-rely on family caregivers. Also realize that when you're over-relying on family caregivers, there could be a concern about inconsistent care, because these informal caregivers, they're not like if you're hiring someone as an employee that has an obligation to show up. They may just call you the morning of and saying that they have a hangnail. They just don't feel like coming in. And unfortunately, when you're dealing with family caregivers, very seldom do you have a backup plan. Okay? And that's why there's this increased risk of neglect or inadequate support when you have this reliance on family caregivers or friends instead of focusing on professionals. Because we all want to save money and we all want to support our family and our loved ones in their times of need. But you have to also realize that these caregivers you're trying to rely on have their own lives. And sometimes you need to allow them to be your brother, your sister, your children, and not a caregiver, so that you don't sever that relationship or strain that relationship. So what's the resolution here? If I'm telling you about all these risks and concerns about the utilization of family caregivers, what's the resolution? So if you're trying to age in place, you need to make sure that you're a good communicator. And in these communications, not only do you have to reference what your intentions are or what you're seeking from these persons, but also exactly what your needs are, both your anticipated needs and your real-time needs. And how are you going to ensure you have this communication with your family? Well, it's going to be via an open dialogue. Realize it's essential for individuals to create a space for honest conversations with their family members regarding their ability and willingness to support their care needs. So, if you know you have one family caregiver that is anti-conflict, and you really want to find out what they're thinking, well, if they're anti-conflict and they want to be viewed as the bad guy, don't try to do this open dialogue in a family reunion environment. Have that open dialogue more one-on-one so that the environment is more comfortable for them to truly be open in the conversation. Also realize there are collaborative solutions, respite care, for example, or you could have the sharing of the caregiving among family members instead of it just being one person. Help kind of reduce that burden on that one person and prevent that burnout we were talking about. And also realize if you're going to be depending on a family caregiver, you need to recognize that they may need financial assistance from you, because they're no longer able to work because caring for you is now becoming a 24/7 job. Or perhaps because it is becoming such an overbearing job, you need to allow them to have their own life. So you need to bring in some professional support that can be able to help out with your care needs. And then lastly, leverage expertise. Supplementing family care, professional caregivers, or certified nursing assistants, this can ensure that this comprehensive support for the individual is being provided. So once again, you've got to make sure that you're having communications. Don't over rely on family caregivers. Realize that you're most likely going to have to bring in third parties, and make sure you have the intent and the need understanding conversation with all those parties involved. Now, pitfall number 3 is health management challenges. So we already talked about this. There's increased healthcare needs of chronic conditions, because we already saw that whole thing about when we're aging, 60 plus, 97, I think it was 98.7 have at least one chronic condition. And chronic conditions, they do require medical supervision. So realize as we're aging, our healthcare needs are going to increase. And there could be a concern about your ability to have access to those regular checkups or specialty visits, because it could become more difficult if you yourself can no longer drive on your own, or you're not as ambulatory as you used to be. And unfortunately, if you can't meet these routine visits or these specialist visits, you could miss an opportunity for an early intervention of something that becomes a more significant ailment, or just the proper care of the ailment that you have. And then lastly, we kind of talked about this when we were talking about the home modifications, but medication. And you could have a very complex medication regimen that you have to follow. And then there's a risk if you don't properly follow it by either missing doses, or perhaps you could have drugs that are having cross ailments against each other due to their medical interactions and lead to potential health complications. So as you see, as we're aging, our healthcare needs are increasing. And we've got to make sure that your healthcare needs can be properly addressed on both a regular basis, a daily basis, and an emergency basis. So what's our resolution for pitfall number 3? First thing, consider hiring what's called a care manager. So these are individuals who you would hire to facilitate communications between your healthcare providers, manage appointments, and ensure that all aspects of your health are closely supervised. In addition to having that care manager, you could also consider utilizing in-home healthcare services. That's a great thing, having them come to visit you, especially, nurses or physical or occupational therapists. Very often, they're now coming into the home for people if they're needed, so that you can continue to receive that ongoing support without having to leave the home. And then lastly, with medication, do not overlook the importance of having one of those medication organizers. You can implement it through a pill box. We already talked about those automatic dispensers that I think today's the last day of Amazon Prime. You might want to look to see if Amazon Prime has any of those on sale. But also, you could have it to where your pharmacist just puts in individual bags your pills that have to be taken either daily or at certain times during the day. Because that's a great thing a lot of pharmacists have started to do, is to make almost like instead of having the pill organizer, they make them with like little baggies. It's actually kind of cute if you haven't seen it before. Because I know my mother's nursing home, when she was still alive, was sitting down and creating this type of environment with their pharmacists so that they always knew that the people were getting the drugs and that they needed at the time when they were to be dispensed. So here's one that's near and dear to me, and that is pitfall number 4, people not having the legal documents, not having them properly in order. And for example, we could be talking about a will or a trust, and failure to possess or update your will or trust, realize that can leave your assets, relationships, personal needs very vulnerable to mismanagement. And further, these outdated documents may not reflect your current situation, leaving loved ones with a lot of confusion and inter-family turmoil and disputes. Further, if you're trying to age in place, you got to make sure you have legally authorized advocates, and that's where your powers of attorney come in. Not designating a trusted agent today could mean that no one's going to be empowered to act on your behalf when you need it most. So without that reliable advocate, your future wishes and decisions could go unaddressed, and you can no longer communicate them yourself. So how do we resolve this issue? And this is something that we resolve here at the Estate and Asset Protection Law Firm on a regular basis. And that is, you want to ensure that your legal documents are updated and in order. Make sure that within these legal documents, you are clearly articulating your current preferences for healthcare, finances, asset distribution. Because I've never met a person that says, I want to leave a chaotic situation for my loved ones. Very often what I hear is that they want to make things as smooth and efficient as possible for their loved ones after their passing, and allow them to smoothly and efficiently manage your affairs during your lifetime to support your quality of life and your standard of living. Well, we got to make sure that you're clearly articulating what that means to you, and that's through your estate planning documents. In addition, you want to avoid legal complications that could happen if you do not have properly executed or updated documents. Outdated documents, they can cause delays. They could require court interventions where if you just would have done a little bit of proactive action, you could have avoided the courts from getting involved. And lastly, it could result in decisions being made that were the farthest thing from what you would have wanted. And then lastly, through these properly drafted estate planning documents, you are going to empower your designated agents to be able to make important decisions for you, either over yourself and your health care or your assets or contractual obligations, if you're no longer able to make those decisions yourself. Always ensuring that your personal needs and preferences are promptly addressed, and you're going to detail what those preferences are within a properly drafted and updated power of attorney, for example. Let's do pitfall number 5. We're getting close to number 7, my friends. But pitfall number 5 is being financially unprepared. This is where, if you're going to age in place and you have a nest egg, you need to work with your financial advisor and your tax advisor to be able to make sure that you are going to be able to effectively and efficiently use that nest egg and stretch it out as long as possible so you can age in place. Because unfortunately, too often people underestimate long-term care cost and realize it's not as simple as, well, I no longer have to pay a mortgage anymore, so I'm going to save all that money. No, you need to realize if you're planning on aging in place, you have to be prepared to have a nest egg that can pay for in-home assistants that may need to be hired from outside the home or family. And those home modifications, we already talked about those. You got to have the money for those home modifications to effectively and successfully age in place. And if you are not truly understanding what these long-term care costs are going to be at the beginning, it can cause significant strain and hinder your access to care due to the limitation of funds. Also, we got to make sure that you're not stuck in the situation of having inadequate insurance coverage. So relying only on Medicare or Medicaid can quickly result in coverage gaps, leading to quickly accumulating out-of-pocket expenses. So not considering supplemental or long-term care insurance can threaten financial stability. And here's the thing. When I say long-term care insurance, so we have traditional, but there's also long-term care strategies that could be utilized, because long-term care insurance can be extremely expensive, but there's still long-term care financial strategies that you can be able to utilize to stretch out that money as long as possible. And in addition to understanding what to anticipate those long-term care costs to be and making sure you have adequate insurance coverage to cover your ever-evolving medical needs, make sure you don't have the situation where you lack a comprehensive budget. Because within that budget is how you're going to be able to truly understand if the money you have is going to stretch out for how long you want it to occur. Because without a budget that includes healthcare costs, living expenses, emergencies, individuals risk being financially unprepared. Through a solid budget, you can have effective expense management, ensure funds are available when they're needed. So, kind of address some of this and just explain what the pitfalls are about being financially unprepared. But what is the resolution? And the resolution is proactive financial planning. Once again, this is where you're working with your financial planner. You want to evaluate potential long-term care costs. Talk to your doctors, talk to your healthcare professionals, talk to support groups. You want to gain an insight into their anticipation of what you could expect as your healthcare needs and necessary services for effective aging in place. Talk to the experts. Don't talk to your neighbor whose sister's cousin's aunt's uncle's roommate had a very similar situation as yours. No. Talk to the professionals, the persons that see it daily, so they can give you a true evaluation of expectation. Number 2, you want to create that very, very detailed budget. And within this budget, you want to include all potential healthcare costs, living expenses, and an emergency fund. And once when you create it, you want to continue to revisit this budget and adjust it regularly as needed. Number 3, make sure you consult with an insurance advisor. They should seek, or they, meaning the person seeking to stay and age in the home, you need to have the advice from a knowledgeable insurance advisor to understand exactly what are your options and determine the best coverage for your needs. And just as you have that insurance advisor, make sure you have that financial planner. Work with them and make sure that they're experienced in elder care so they have experience in trying to help create that long-term strategy that incorporates aging-related expenses, ensures appropriate funding allocation, and understands that your goal is to age in place. Pat just stated, "You're right on. After taking care of my mom and husband, I had all things taken care of. My son and wife moved into my basement, and I can give them their space. I no longer drive, so he is my chauffeur." You're nicer to call him a chauffeur than your Uber driver, because I always tell my father when I go and visit him that I'm his Uber driver, and I want to make sure that he gives me 5 stars with every single one of my times I'm taking him to his destinations. But that's awesome, Pat. Let's talk about pitfall number 6. So pitfall number 6 is when you're so focused on the finances and the health care and being in your safe environment of your home, a lot of times if you're aging in place, those neighbors that you used to play cards with or who had their children that played at your house all the time with your children, well, the neighborhood is going to change. And friend units very often change. So you got to make sure that you're not ignoring the importance of social connection. One of the things we definitely saw through the COVID situation, where people were trying to age in place and stay in place during COVID, was the desolation of effect for the social isolation. Because if you're going to age in place, you've got to maintain strong social ties. Because if you don't, it's going to lead to isolation, particularly for persons living alone. And that living alone is going to lead towards loneliness, because without that regular interaction with others, and loneliness is going to set in. And it's going to create this horrible emotional strain, and it's going to negatively impact your mental health. And one of the things that was seen, during COVID and other significant life challenges is that prolonged isolation and loneliness, it can deteriorate your physical health, increase that risk of depression, cognitive decline, and other serious conditions. So if you're going to age in place, you got to make sure that you avoid this pitfall and realize there is an importance of social connection. So what's the resolution that I suggest to ensure that you recognize, you address, and you move forward with focusing on that importance of social connection as you age in place? Well, that's building and nurturing social connections. I want you to plan for active social engagement. Take advantage of opportunities to connect, whether by joining a local senior center, participating in community activities, or even using virtual platforms to stay in touch with families, friends in your community. I want you to explore mental health support. Do not hesitate to seek help when needed. Counseling and support groups, they can provide valuable emotional support and enhance overall well-being. And then lastly, stay connected. Maintain those social ties, because that's essential for you to remain mentally sharp, emotionally balanced, and live a more fulfilling life while aging in place. And then pitfall number 7, my friends, we're at that final pitfall finally. And that pitfall is not being aware of available resources. Very often people have limited awareness. And a lot of times, because of that limited awareness, seniors are at risk of being unaware of these programs that actually are available to them, whether it be government initiatives such as Medicaid and supplemental nutrition assistance. These can actually give significant assistance to the financial obligations that you're going to incur in aging in place, but also ensuring that your healthcare basic needs are met. Because without knowledge of these resources, older adults can find themselves struggling to cover daily living expenses, leading to increased financial strain, increased isolation because they do not believe they have the funds to go out to socialize, or they believe that they don't deserve the ability to go out and socialize because they self-punish themselves also. Further, realize there's a lot of underutilization of community services because these community services, such things as meal delivery, transportation assistance, social engagement programs, in every community, we have these and they are tailored for our seniors. However, when older adults are unaware of these, they miss out that critical opportunity to ease some of these challenges while aging in place. So what's my resolution to you? Here's my resolution, friends. Below are a sample of some of the programs and community services that can assist a person when aging in place. So for example, to help with in-home care expenses, you want to understand and perhaps seek the legal assistance to obtain Medicaid. We've got the Elder and Disability Waiver Program, used to be known as CCSP or Community Medicaid. This is where you can get onto the Medicaid program if you properly qualify, and you can get a caregiver coming out to your personal home to help out. For our wartime veterans out there, don't forget to help out with some of those in-home care expenses. We've got VA wartime pension aid and attendance. And then lastly, just for our standard veterans out there that may not be wartime veterans, don't forget that you've got the VA Community Care Network that could perhaps have it to where the VA will cover the expenses for a caregiver to come into your home a certain number of hours a week, maybe 5 or 8 hours a week. But hey, it's 5 or 8 hours of care, and it can give respite to your family caregiver, for example. Once again, This is some programs or community services that could be available to help out with the home expenses and repair needs. We've got Georgia's own Jimmy Carter's Habitat for Humanity. And don't forget, we also have the Atlanta Regional Commission's Aging and Independent Services. To help with nutritional and fitness needs, we got Meals on Wheels. We've got the Medicaid SNAP program. And we've got something called Silver Sneakers, which is really nice. And then lastly, to help out with social engagement opportunities, look at the National Council on Aging, ARP, as well as your local senior centers. Now, what I'm going to do really quick, because a lot of what I've talked about today, some of it's now to the point that you might want to understand more, especially when we start talking about the preparation for long-term care planning in the home. And what I'm doing right now is I'm extending to you guys. If you look on the right-hand side of your screen, you're going to see the green Book Now button. If you would like to take the opportunity to have a complimentary 15-minute strategy session with one of my non-attorney team members to discuss aging in place, to make sure that you are ready to age in place or make sure that you're on the right course while you're age in place, schedule a complimentary strategy session. Talk to my team member. Among other things, we can make sure that your legal documents are proper. We can make sure that you've declared your advocates and they're going to be able to advocate for you. If you're starting to need care in the home, maybe we might want to start talking about either a crisis or proactive Medicaid strategy, for example. Perhaps you want us to refer you to an individual that can help you guys with either insurance or financial advising. Please, anything I talked about today, by attending today, realize you get that opportunity for no cost. It is complimentary. It is 15 minutes with a non-attorney team member. And that could be that first step that you need to ensure that you're successfully going to be aging in place. Now, as a final thought here, perhaps the most dangerous mistake is waiting too long to start planning for aging in place. Because by the time a crisis hits, an individual's options may be limited, and the chance to stay in the home could be gone. So realize the sooner an individual begins thinking about their future needs, the more control you'll have over aging in place. Proactive planning allows an individual to make informed decisions before a crisis forces your hand. And that's why I encourage you, if you have not already, hit that green book now to schedule your complimentary 15-minute strategy session. Now, if anybody has any questions, like some people have been doing, don't hesitate. Put any questions you may have in chat. We've got about another 7 minutes for the conclusion of this 1-hour presentation. So please put them in chat. I'll gladly respond to them. Or for something you are a little bit more shy, don't want to say it in a public forum, or it's more personal, once again, that's the other reason to do that complimentary 15-minute strategy session, my friends. Now, as I'm waiting to see if anybody has any questions, what can y'all guys expect now from us today? Number one, you should expect a team member to contact you to express our appreciation for your attendance at today's seminar. And if you want to reach out to us sooner than that call, realize if you have any questions, want immediate discussion with one of my non-attorney team members to discuss your specific circumstances, don't hesitate to call us at 404-370-0696. Now, Deborah just asked, are there organizations that do home assessments for aging? And by home assessments, Deborah, are you referring to the number one pitfall I was talking about with the home modifications? And if that is what you were thinking of, yes, there are. As a matter of fact, there are a handful that we have that my team refers out, but they're usually persons that are, they do home construction. And they'll come out, they'll look, they'll talk to you a little bit more about what you think your needs are. They'll look at the bathrooms, for example, and say, well, we need to do this, this, and this here. We need you to have a bigger toilet. We need to have grab rolls. Maybe we don't want this to be a bathtub. Maybe we need to turn this into a roll-in shower if you're starting to have mobility issues. But yes, there are companies out there that do that. And if you haven't already, Deborah, go ahead and hit that blue I think it's green actually, the green book now and schedule. And when you speak to my team member, just express, among other things, that you'd like to have a referral for an organization that does that home assessment for aging so they can tell you what should be done and what that investment point would be to do just that. And MJ asked the question, will y'all guys be getting a copy of today's presentation? And you will. Y'all guys will be getting a copy of my presentation, of the video. It'll be coming to y'all guys after today's presentation. And once again, I emphasize, as our thank you for you attending today's webinar, we do want to make sure that you know you are entitled to that complimentary, no cost to you 15-minute strategy session. And in this session, my non-attorney team member is going to be able to discuss with you your goals, confirm we're a good fit, and talk about next steps. Okay? And with that, my friends, we are actually at the top of the hour. Hopefully this has been a good presentation for you guys. Once again, thank you so much for being so flexible that we could redo that today. Where, as I stated at the beginning, I apologize for those that may have joined later. I apologize for not being able to conduct this on July 3rd as this was originally scheduled. Unfortunately, my mother passed that morning and I wasn't in a condition to do the presentation, but I know how important this topic is to myself, to my mother, because this was a big thing with her, and also to you guys. So I'm really happy you guys were able to join today. And with that, thank you everyone for attending today. If you have not already, hit that green book now, schedule your complimentary consultation. And with that, everyone, have a wonderful week.